I didn't know my husband owned a second house until the day I stood on its sun-faded porch and heard my daughter, the one who ran away 10 years ago, say, "Mom, I'm back." Beside her was a little boy with a cowlick and serious brown eyes. He took 2 brave steps, knuckles tight around a toy fire truck, and said, "Mom, this is the grandmother you were telling me about." I was 66, a widow of 5 months, and apparently a homeowner twice over. Quick pause, subscribe, hit like, and drop your city in the comments so I can say hi next time. If I rewind, it starts with an envelope that slid across the glossy mahogany of Attorney Feldman's conference table. "From Harold," he said, even though he had died in March. The envelope had my name in Hal's blocky mechanic's handwriting, "Elaine, open when you're ready." Inside were a key on a brass ring, a photocopied plat map, and an address in Lebanon, Ohio, Warren County. Also a printed sticky note, "You'll know why." That was all. On a bright Friday in May, I drove my old Camry north from Kettering with my church choir tote and a peanut butter sandwich in wax paper. The map led me to Sycamore Hollow, a tidy subdivision with flagstones and stubborn dandelions, the kind with an HOA newsletter about mailbox paint colors. The address matched a pale yellow ranch with a brick planter full of dry soil and a single hard-shelled hydrangea bud thinking about being blue. The key fit, the deadbolt gave, and there she was. "Mom," she said again, like a word she had been testing in her mouth for months. Maddie, my Maddie, who had left at 20. Her hair was darker, cut to her collarbone. She wore a thrifted red sweater and held a boy with my husband's eyebrows. "This is Owen," she said. "He's 5. If grief has a sound, mine was the crack of my cast iron skillet falling off its hook when Hal collapsed in our kitchen in March. If joy has a sound, it was the snap of this screen door as it scraped over the threshold and we collided, her shoulder against my cardigan, the little boy carefully wedged between us like a fragile package. We sat at the dusty laminate kitchen table with mugs of sink water. The house had the smell of old carpet and unopened blinds. "When did you get here?" I asked. "Wednesday." Maddie glanced at the electric panel and the stack of unopened mail on the counter. "The power's on. The water wasn't. I got it switched over. The mailbox had a key taped inside the top. It was labeled for you." I did a slow look around. There was a checked dish towel still folded in the drawer with price tag crispness. A new sponge in cellophane. On the counter, a tin I recognized. My old red and white cookie tin, one I'd lost in a church rummage sale 3 summers back. I lifted the lid. Inside were receipts, gas stations from I-71, a grocery store in Miamisburg, bananas, milk, a box of crayons. Dates from the week after the funeral. My throat went hot. "I thought you were in Seattle," I said before I could stop myself. That had been the rumor from a friend years ago. "We were," she said, her voice curt around the past. "Then not. It's a long story." Owen stood on tiptoe to look at a framed photo leaning on the counter, Hal at Lake Erie's holding a walleye the size of a baseball bat. "That's Grandpa?" he asked. "That's Grandpa," I said. He turned it gently, like glass. The first trouble arrived 20 minutes later in the form of a white SUV that idled at the curb like it owned the asphalt. The woman who got out had a real estate smile and wedges that sank a little in the patchy lawn. "Elaine Porter," she called. "I'm Stacy Kroll with Kroll Realty Group. We've been trying to reach you." I met her at the porch steps, my palm on the raked banister. "About what?" "About the closing," she said brightly, as if I'd asked about a coupon. "The seller signed a week ago, and we're set for next Thursday, Buckeye title. Your late husband's power of attorney executed the quitclaim to Sycamore Acquisitions. I just need you to leave the keys on the counter when you go. Security will rekey day of." She smiled at my stunned look the way a dentist smiles at a child holding a lollipop. "And heads up, the HOA has been assessing fines due to the lawn and porch debris. We can fold those into closing if you prefer." "I didn't authorize a sale," I said, "and my husband didn't have power of attorney. He was the principal." Of course, she said cheerfully, not listening. The POA holder executed for him, Wendy Kroll. It's all recorded. I can send you the link. Maddie? The name slipped out because my daughter had gone white. Her eyes were locked on the SUV. She tugged Owen behind her like she recognized the car. We're good here, I told the woman. Her smile trimmed itself. Ma'am, if you impede entry, we'll have to note it. The HOA president, Mr. Leland, has been very patient. The property's been a nuisance. I'm just trying to make it smooth. Send whatever you have to my email, I said, and gave her the address I keep for bake sale signups, the one I never check. She left a business card, Stacy Kroll, broker, with a gold arrow through her name. When the SUV turned the corner, Maddie let out a breath that sounded like tearing paper. She's been circling since Wednesday, she whispered. She keeps parking. She takes pictures. She said the HOA has a right to enter. She told me I'm trespassing. You're not trespassing, I said, my voice growing. I went mailbox fishing and hauled in a week's worth of envelopes like wet laundry. There were circulars, a notice from Warren County Treasurer about property taxes paid through escrow, and a glossy HOA letter, notice of violations, trash receptacles viewable from street, grass height over HOA standard, porch clutter tentative. Assessments totaled $4,730, which was a number born in a conference room, not in a patch of grass. Unfolded at the bottom of the mail stack was a Buckeye title letter, confirmation of closing, June 5th, seller, Harold Porter, by POA, buyer, Sycamore Acquisitions, LLC. There was an attached seller proceeds estimate showing zero to the estate. Instead, line items, HOA fines, vacant property abatement, investor fee, expedite notary, all draining any proceeds to a trickle. The notary listed was the same, Wendy Kroll. My hands started to shake, like they do when I go past 12 hours after my evening pill organizer. I anchored them around a legal pad. We're going to the recorder's office, I said. Warren County Recorder keeps their office in a brick building with a mural of farm fields and a river. The woman at the public computers showed me how to search the grantor-grantee index. I typed Hal Porter and got nothing. Harold D. Porter lit the screen like a struck match. 2 deeds, one warranty deed 3 years back to a Sycamore Hollow Land Trust with a trustee I didn't recognize, and a quitclaim from 2 weeks ago. Harold D. Porter by POA Wendy Kroll to Sycamore Acquisitions, LLC. I clicked. The PDF bloomed. The signature said Harold D. Porter, but the P in Porter slumped. Hal always wrote it sharp at the top like a little flag. The notary stamp was tilted, as if someone had pushed it fast and lifted quicker. The commission ID under the seal ended with 2024. I pressed print and held the copy like a hot dish. Can I see the notary's journal? I asked the clerk, already knowing the answer. We don't keep those, she said. Notaries are required to keep them personally. What about the power of attorney? I asked. Do you have a recording for it? She searched again, frowning. No POA recorded here under that name. Outside, the heat had ripened. The white SUV was parked across the street again, as if it had followed us. Get the plate, I said to Maddie. She took a photo. The boy in the back seat waved at us with 2 fingers and a goldfish cracker. Buckeye Title answered on the first ring. This is Jade, the voice said. How can I help? You can pause the closing, I said. I'm not authorized to. Then transfer me to someone who is. The seller is deceased. The POA is questionable. The deed appears to have been notarized after his date of death. I heard myself, smaller than the roar in my chest, but steady. I have the death certificate right here. She transferred me. A man named Cullen took the line, and I told him everything like I used to list parts off a repair ticket when I worked the counter at Hal's Auto Shop. Dates, numbers, instrument ID, commission number, a stamp tilting like a crooked hat. Email me the death certificate and the date you printed, he said. I'll escalate. We do not want to ensure a fraudulent transaction. On the drive back to Sycamore Hollow, Maddie watched the rear view like a lifeguard. Mom, she said, can we lock the gate on the side yard? Do you still remember our garage code? I asked. 6172, she said without hesitation, and I had to wipe my face with my sleeve. At the house, I discovered the tin of receipts wasn't the only thing of mine here. In the bedroom closet was a quilt top I'd been piecing the winter before Hal died, a fan pattern in calicos. A whole corner was finished, the seam lines fresh. I ran my fingers over the stitching. Hal didn't sew. Did he bring this? I asked the heir, and the heir, for once, kept its secrets. My phone chimed, a new voicemail from an unknown number. Hey, Wendy, I need the signature page. We can't file without it. Call me before 4. Then, like he realized the mistake, this is Rico. I saved it. I texted it to myself and to Maddie's new number and to the Gmail account I never used. I wrote the time down on my legal pad and put a star next to it because I have learned there are times when being a woman who keeps lists becomes a superpower. That night, we slept with a chair under the doorknob, like girls at a slumber party. The AC coughed into life and coughed out. Owen conked out on the couch under an afghan my Aunt Ruby crocheted in the 70s, a rainbow that had faded into dignified stripes. Maddie and I lay awake in the dark and listened to the steady of the clock and the highway vowels. He loved you, I said, the sentence brittle. I know, she whispered. I think he tried to show me. In the morning, I went to the HOA office because it seemed like a thing a grown-up would do. Their office was a converted model home with a Keurig and a tray of stale sugar cookies from Kroger. Mr. Leland, the president, had a polo with the HOA logo, 2 leaves, and the word sycamore in a font that tried to be friendly. He slid a manila folder toward me with the blandness of a man who has done this many times. We've documented violations, he said. Rust on mailbox flag, fence gate visible from street, porch clutter visible. The house was empty, I said. You were fining an empty house. Vacant homes attract problems. We encourage owners to sell quickly to responsible investors. We can recommend several. I've met one, I said. Her name is Stacy, and you two are in this together. He smiled without showing his molars. Ma'am, we're not in anything, but we are empowered by the bylaws to levy daily fines, and a lien can be recorded if unpaid. Record away, I said. You'll be recording it on the wrong property if that deed goes through. That's a hint. I stood. Also, you should know I brought my church choir here last Sunday to look at the azaleas. 37 women. We pray best when we're mad. By noon, I had an email from Cullen at Buckeye Title. We have placed a hold on the file pending verification. Then another, hours later. Our internal notary check shows the commission number on the deed belongs to a notary whose commission expired last year. He is out of state this week. We have requested his journal entry for the date in question. Do you have any other documents? I did what Hal used to do when an engine wouldn't turn over the way it should. I made a notebook. On the first page, I wrote questions. On the second, proof. On the third, things that feel wrong. I added the white SUV's license plate, the HOA's fine totals, the faint pencil mark behind a Leichslage that said May 2, keys in vent, and then I unscrewed the cold air return and fished my arm in past the dust bunnies. My fingers met a magnetic box like the kind you hide under a bumper. Inside was a flash drive and a folded note, 4E, kitchen desk. In the desk drawer, taped under the pencil tray, was a bank safe deposit key on a paper tag. The tag had Hell's writing, Huntington, Box 218, Use Certificate. I held the little key on my palm and felt the gravity of 10 years. Stay till the end. I'll show the truth. I went outside to clear my head and found the SUV idling again. Stacy sat behind the wheel, texting. You're not supposed to be here, she called. You're not supposed to be closing, I said, but here we are. That evening, I walked next door with a loaf of banana bread because I know how to introduce myself in a way that makes people tell me things. The neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Kim, took the bread and waved me inside. On her mantel was a white plastic doorbell camera, the kind you pop out and charge occasionally. "Stacy's been buzzing around like a hornet since April," she said as she poured tea. "She brought a locksmith last week. He tried to pick your side door. I told him I had my classroom voice if he didn't leave. Do you need the video?" "Yes," I said, and she grinned the way a woman grins when she knows she just became useful. The clip had a date stamp, May 28, 2:12 p.m. It showed a man with a tool roll kneeling at my doorknob while Stacy stood with her arms folded, scanning the street. He worked for 3 minutes and then jerked away like a child burned by a stove when Mrs. Kim stepped out onto her porch. "I'll send you the file," she said. "I never liked that woman. She parks in the fire lane at the school." I added the video to my proof page. I added a line from the Buckeye title email, "Notary commission expired," underlined twice. I added "Rico voicemail needs signature page." Then I did what I do when my stitches won't lie flat on a quilt. I set it aside for a moment so I wouldn't make a mess, and I made dinner. I boiled spaghetti in a dented pot, grated Parmesan from my freezer, set out 3 plates and a folded paper towel napkin for each, the way my mother did when bills were tight and manners kept you upright. After we ate, I tucked Owen into the makeshift bedroom under my old quilt. He asked, "Will there be pancakes?" It was such a serious question. "Yes," I said, "blueberry on the big skillet." He considered this, solemn. "Grandma," he said, "we don't have blueberries." I smiled. "We will." That night, on my way to bed, I found a note jammed under the screen door. No envelope. No police. No recorder. Keys tomorrow. Cash on Friday. We can make this easy. The handwriting leaned forward, hurried. There was a phone number at the bottom that started with 937, which is Dayton. I took a photo, bagged the note in a sandwich bag like I'd seen on television, and put it in the freezer behind the frozen peas. Some things are too hot to keep in the open. By morning, I had 3 voicemails. The first was the Rico one again, as if he'd pocket-dialed me. The second was Stacy. "Elaine, I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone." The third was a man with a heavy breathing pause before he spoke. "You think you can stop something that's already rolling?" Click. I made pancakes in my biggest cast iron skillet. Owen counted blueberries as he dropped them into the batter. 1, 2, 5, 6. "That's a good system," I told him. I ate one standing up at the stove like my Aunt Ruby used to when she didn't want anyone to see how many cookies she took. The skillet left a familiar shine on the burner. For 10 minutes, life looked like it used to. A kitchen haze hanging over the sink, the slow churn of coffee in the Mr. Coffee, the sound of a child negotiating with maple syrup. At 10, Maddie and I drove to Huntington Bank with Hal's death certificate, my driver's license, and that small gold key that felt like the weight of a decade. We signed our names in a ledger with a pen tied by a ball chain. The attendant slid out a long, narrow box. I lifted the lid. There was a stack of sealed envelopes, each crisped and labeled in Hal's hand. One said, "Elaine, read this first." Another said, "Maddie, when you're ready." There were also photocopies of a trust, a letter on an attorney's letterhead from Cincinnati I did not recognize, and a little flash drive, twin to the one from the vent. I closed the box. My hands shook again, but not from low blood sugar. "Not here," I whispered. "Not yet." When we got back to the house, the HOA had posted a bright orange notice on the door. "Notice of abatement, landscape correction scheduled." The date was tomorrow. The amount due if we did not comply was $1,980. Under the notice, in small font, was Sycamore Hollow Board. Contact Kirk Leland. His phone number. At 2 o'clock, my phone chimed with a text from a number that looked like it came from a texting app. "Don't go to the recorder tomorrow." A minute later, a second text. "We see you." Attached was a photo snapped from behind us at the bank. My throat went cold. I looked up and down the street. The white SUV was absent, but the feeling of it sat heavy. I pressed call. "This is Elaine Porter," I said when a recorded voice answered. "I don't do threats." Silence, then the line clicked dead.
By late afternoon, I'd assembled a binder with clear sleeves like we use at church for choir programs. Inside, the deed copy with the tilted stamp, the Buckeye title emails, a printout of the notary commission details I found online, the HOA fines, the white SUV's plate. I added a still from Mrs. Kim's doorbell video. I added Rico's transcribed voicemail. On the inside cover, I wrote Hal's House in black Sharpie. Then I tucked the bank envelopes in the back, unopened. At 6, we went to the HOA board meeting. They met in the community room of the Sycamore Pool House, a place that smelled like chlorine and old graham crackers. 8 folding chairs, 3 board members with laptops, and an air of boredom. It was open forum. I waited until they were finished rehashing mailbox paint. "My name is Elaine Porter," I said, and my voice filled the room like a hymn. "I own 142 Meadowlark. Your management company says I owe nearly $6,000 for grass and a gate. A realtor you know tried to pick my lock. A deed was recorded with my deceased husband's name and a notary commission that expired last year. I have a copy right here." 3 heads swiveled. Kirk Leland tried to do that thing certain men do when they want to be seen as patient. "Mrs. Porter, there's a process for disputes." "The process is not extortion," I said, "and the process is not collusion." He straightened. "Are you accusing the HOA of a crime?" "I'm telling you, I have questions for the Attorney General's Consumer Division and the state's Real Estate Board. And your name, Mr. Leland, is on the letter that tells me to leave by tomorrow. So yes, I have questions." I held up the binder. This is the preacher's wife version of a subpoena. It's not legally binding, but it is very loud. A little laugh broke out in the back from a woman I didn't know. Stacy hadn't come, or she was outside, waiting. On my way back to the house, my phone buzzed. A new email from Buckeye Title. "We have received the notary's journal page. It shows an entry on May 10 at 2 p.m. The location recorded is a Starbucks in Columbus. Your husband's signature is attested there. We have requested video verification from that location." I read it twice. "May 10?" I said to the empty car. "He died March 17th. I parked, heart banging. The porch light had a moth inside its globe, battering the bulb with powdery wings. I slid my key into the lock with that specific relief that is part homecoming and part defense. On the kitchen table was a manila envelope I hadn't left. It was addressed just like the others. Hale's blocky letters, but the H was wrong, and the L was looped at the bottom like a dancer's kick, which my husband never did. It was empty. I set it down. I looked at Maddie. She looked at me. In the silence, the refrigerator hummed like a low voice behind a thin wall. "Mom," she said quietly, "we need to open the letter from the box." I nodded, but my hand didn't move. My heart did a small human thing. It hesitated where it hurt. The white SUV idled past one last time, slow as a tide. The child in the back seat had fallen asleep with a cracker in his fist. Stacy didn't look in. She didn't have to. By then, she knew I had seen her, and I knew she knew. I waited until the house was dark, except for a lamp in the front room, the kind of light you leave on when you want someone to think you aren't afraid. Then I brought the safe deposit envelope to the table and broke the seal with my bread knife. Inside was a letter on yellow legal paper. Hal's handwriting marched down the page like a man who was late but trying not to show it. "E," it began. "If you're reading this, I didn't get to say this looking you in the eye. About our girl." I stopped. I folded the paper closed on that sentence like I was shielding a child from a storm. "Tomorrow," I said aloud to no one. "Tomorrow." The clock on the stove read 11:03. Somewhere in Sycamore Hollow, a door shut. Somewhere in my chest, I made a promise to Hal I didn't know I'd been making for a decade. I will see this through. I didn't sleep that night. I ironed pillowcases I didn't need ironed and lined up spice jars by height and date like a battalion. At 5 in the morning, when birds started the foolish gossip they do about sunrise, I sat at the kitchen table with Hal's letter and a cup of coffee black as river mud. I unfolded the yellow paper and read, E. If you're reading this, I didn't get to say this looking you in the eye. About our girl. She reached out to me 2 winters after she left. I kept it from you because she asked me to. She was scared, and I didn't ask enough questions at first. That's on me. When I finally asked, she told me enough to know she needed a safe place and time. I bought this house in the land trust to keep her name out of sight. I was going to bring you here when I could show you she was ready. I messed up by waiting. That's on me too. If I'm gone, you're the successor trustee. Help her. The rest is in the binder in the hall closet. H. I read it 3 times. The words left a print on me, the way a hot pan leaves a ring on a wooden table. Dark, undeniable, a record of heat. I wasn't angry at him, not in the way I thought I'd be. I was angry at the distance we had both curated, like a lawn, trimmed, acceptable, distant. I was angry that fear had wasted our time and love. In the hall closet, behind a stack of cheap paper towel packs, was a black 3-ring binder with a clear sleeve holding a page that said Sycamore Hollow Land Trust in 12-point font. Inside, the trust agreement naming Hal as trustee, and, in neat print, successor trustee Elaine Porter. Beneficiary Madeline Porter. There were also copies of wire transfers, emails with a Cincinnati attorney I'd never met, and a notarized letter signed by Maddie, different last name, that I will not repeat here because it was hers to share. But I will say this, it told me enough to make the hair lift on my arms, and enough to make me grateful Hal had chosen secrecy over spectacle. Our daughter had been surviving, and then she had been protecting someone smaller than herself. Mom? Maddie stood in the hallway, her sweater sleeves pushed up, hair rumpled by sleep. Do I get to read it? I handed her Hal's letter. I watched her read, her mouth shaping a little O in the middle. When she finished, she pressed the paper to her chest. He knew, she whispered, like it was a prayer. He knew, and he didn't make me tell. We turned to the trust binder together. On page 6, a clause lit me up like a bolt. On the death or incapacity of the trustee, the successor trustee shall take immediate control and shall not be subject to power of attorney appointments purporting to act for the deceased trustee. I called Buckeye Title with the sentence ready to read. Cullen, I said when he picked up, the property is held in a land trust. The trustee was my husband. I am the successor trustee. There's no lawful way a separate POA could have conveyed this without the trust paperwork. Send them, he said. Also, the Starbucks video request came back. The cameras only record inside, but we obtained the notary's phone GPS summary for that day with his consent. He was in Toledo at 2 p.m., not Columbus. And one more thing, the notary told us he never met your husband. He believes someone stamped his name on a page he didn't notarize. I put him on speaker so Maddie could listen. So your file is closed? I asked. I wanted the words. As of this morning, he said, that closing is suspended pending investigation. We've notified the buyer and the realtor. I exhaled a breath I'd been carrying since the SUV first hove into view. Thank you, I said. I'll bring you the trust documents in person. By 9, I had a second binder, my favorite kind, the one with the clear front and an index of tabs I made with my labeler. The tabs read Trust, Notary, HOA, Realtor, Threats, Video, Bank. I changed out of my pancake-stained shirt into a navy church dress I'd worn to funerals and baptisms and once to a county recorder retirement party. On our way out, we found a paper on the windshield. Clocks ticking. The T was cut fanciful, a show-off cursive I recognized from Stacy's business cards. I stuck it under the Threats tab. At Buckeye Title, Cullen met us in the lobby. He was younger than his emails made him sound, and had the look of a man who didn't expect this day to be interesting. He examined the trust documents with the reverence of a person who knows paper has power when it is lined up correctly. This will do it, he said. Do you give us permission to share with the county recorder and, if necessary, law enforcement?
Yes, I said simply. Share with whoever can untangle this without me going to jail for beaning someone with my skillet. He smiled at that, and I could tell that he was picturing the skillet. Mrs. Porter, he said, I know you don't need it, but you've got us in your corner. After we left, we stopped at the Starbucks off Columbus Avenue, the one from the notary's false journal entry. I bought Owen a cake pop and Maddie a latte, and myself a drip coffee that tasted like burnt courage. At a corner table, I opened the second safe deposit envelope, the one labeled, Maddie, when you're ready. She read it silently, and it was like watching a drought break over a field. Her shoulders uncrumpled. She wiped her nose with a napkin. He told me to forgive us, she said, soft, all of us. We went next to the Warren County Recorder. I recorded an affidavit of successor trustee, which is all I'll say about the document because I'm not here to teach anyone how to do anything illegal or legal. I'm telling you what I did, not what you should do. The clerk stamped it with a thunk that felt ceremonial. Then I asked, do buyers file notices when they're LLCs? She pointed to the computer. I searched SYCOMO Acquisitions LLC and found its organizer, a man named Richard Rico Alvarez. I took a printout. I held it next to my voicemail transcript where the caller had identified himself. It matched like a sock pulled from the back of the dryer that you thought you'd lost forever. Keep watching. There will be justice. On our way to the car, my phone pinged with a public Instagram story sent by Mrs. Kim with one of those gleeful text messages older women send when they know they have found gold. Look what I found. The story showed Stacy at a wine bar on May 10 at 2:03 p.m. with the caption, "Bless this mama who does closings and mom duty. #multitask queen." Her little daughter waved at the camera in a booster seat. The angle captured the clock on the wall, 2:03 glowing in neon. Her GPS tag put her in Cincinnati, not Columbus. I took a screenshot and added it to the binder under Notary. At noon, we had an appearance at the HOA office because Kirk had emailed suggesting we discuss options. I brought both binders. Mrs. Porter, he began, leaning back like the chair owed him something. We can offer to waive half the fines if you'll sign a consent for sale to our recommended buyer. We can also expedite abatement to avoid further costs to you. There will be no sale, I said, sliding the trust tab across the desk. And your abatement crew will not set foot on my property without my invitation. Here is the recorded affidavit of successor trustee. Here are emails from Buckeye Title suspending the closing. Here is a list of your threatened fines, along with your letterhead. And here, I slid the threats tab forward, is a bagged note from my freezer I'm ready to hand to the sheriff. He glanced at it, waved a hand. We didn't write that. I have a neighbor's camera showing your recommended realtor attempting entry with a locksmith, I said, and tapped the video tab. And if I have to, I'll bring Mrs. Kim and her classroom voice to every meeting you hold until the end of time. Kirk's smile frayed. This is all very dramatic, he said. We're just trying to keep our neighborhood tidy. You're trying to keep your racket tidy, I said. And yes, I regretted calling it that, but not enough to take it back. And you partnered with the wrong widow. He leaned forward, an attempt to inflate. Watch your tone, Mrs. Porter. Watch your liability, I said, and watched the way his eyes darted to the corner where a security camera blinked. I'd like a copy of the bylaws, the minutes from the last 6 months, and any written agreements between the HOA and Sycamore Acquisitions or Kroll Realty. Printed, please. I said please the way my mother used to when she was sharpening a knife. By evening, other neighbors had started stopping by with information, the way birds bring twigs. A retired firefighter 2 doors down brought me a printout of a Facebook post where Stacy advertised off-market opportunities with motivated trustees. The neighborhood mom with 3 boys told me she'd been approached about selling problem homes more than once.
A quiet man across the lane said he'd seen Mr. Leland and Stacy arrive together at odd hours in the spring. It was plainer than porch paint, a system of pressure, a market of fear. I didn't sleep again. I sorted papers, I pressed them flat, I labeled with a precision that would make my choir proud. At 2 a.m., I sat in the front room and listened to the soft whir of the refrigerator and the click of Owen's nightlight turning on and off as the sensor got confused by the moths. On the coffee table, Hal's photo with the fish watched me from the frame. "We're doing it," I told him. "We're actually doing it." At 9 the next morning, a sheriff's cruiser rolled down the street, like a tune you know the words to. Behind it was a car I recognized from our church, Detective Laura Meacham's. She and her wife come to Christmas Eve service every year because her mother drags them, and I have watched Laura nudge a candle into a cup for the person next to her with care. She stepped out in plain clothes. "Elaine," she said, friendly, "I heard your name at roll call and asked if I could take this one."
Who called? I asked, startled. Buckeye Title, she said. They flagged a suspected fraudulent recording, a notary misuse, and a possible burglary attempt. We went inside. I set the binders out like communion. I talked, I played the voicemail, I showed her the Instagram story and the notary GPS summary. Mrs. Kim came over in her house shoes with a flash drive and a plate of melon cubes because she is an angel walking around in a cardigan. Detective Meacham took it all in with the measured patience of a person who has to sort drama from crime every day of her life. Around lunch, she said, "Here's what we're going to do. The title company has invited the realtor and the buyer to a status meeting this afternoon to discuss next steps. Would you like to come? You'll be in a conference room nearby. You will say nothing, but you'll hear enough." I turned to Maddie. "Do you want to?" She nodded. "Yes." We drove to Buckeye Title. A receptionist with calming plants and terracotta pots led us to a glass-walled conference room with complimentary peppermints and an air conditioner that made everything feel like a dentist's office even though no drilling was happening. Cullen met us with a short stack of folders. "They're in the main room," he said. "We'll keep your door closed. You'll be able to hear through the vent." I pressed my ear very ungrandmotherly to the metal grate. Stacy's voice came through like a radio with good reception. "We just need to get creative," she said. "The seller intended to sell. I have the emails from Wendy. We can just re-execute." Cullen's voice was steady. "The trustee is deceased. The successor trustee is present and has not authorized any conveyance. The notary's journal does not support your deed. We cannot proceed." A man I didn't recognize, Rico, I imagined, said too casually, "Documents get messy. We can cure it." Detective Meacham stepped in, and her voice cut the room like a bell. "What you can do," she said, "is explain this." Paper rustled. "You used a notary stamp without authorization, attached to a signature after the signer's death, and attempted forced entry to the property with a locksmith. You then attempted to collect a fee from the seller's proceeds while arranging HOA fines to pressure a quick sale. Are you disputing any of that?" There was a silence that wasn't silence. It was oxygen going out of a plan. "I need to call my attorney," Stacy said finally. "You do that," Detective Meacham said, crisp as new linen. "This meeting is over." 10 minutes later, we were all in the same room because sometimes God likes to write a scene and ask if you'll read it like it's true. Stacy stood with her arms crossed, tight. Rico tried to look anywhere but at me. Kirk Leland arrived late, blustering, and stopped short when he saw a badge. "Mrs. Porter," Detective Meacham said, "we're recommending you file a statement, and we'll coordinate with the prosecutor regarding charges related to the notary misuse and any attempted burglary. Buckeye Title will be sending written notice to all parties that the transaction is canceled. The recorder's office has flagged the deed, and your affidavit is now attached to the parcel, so no further transfer can occur without your signature. As for the HOA, you can address the fines at small claims or with your attorney, but based on what I've seen, they should be rescinded." I looked at Kirk. "Will you rescind them?"
He opened his mouth to say something and closed it. "We'll meet as a board," he said finally. There was no confidence in it, only a draft. On the way home, we stopped at the Kroger for blueberries and a bunch of hydrangeas in a metal bucket. Owen rode in the cart with his fire truck. In the checkout line, he looked up at me and asked, "Is the house ours?" I said, "Yes, honey," and it was more than a house I meant. The next days were a slow parade of justice. Buckeye Title emailed me copies of their notices, the recorder called to confirm the affidavit attachment and to tell me quietly, off the record, that they were reviewing other deeds involving the same names. The State Real Estate Board acknowledged my complaint with a reference number and instructions I won't repeat because I'm not a pamphlet. The HOA sent a letter, unsigned, saying fines were reconsidered. I went to the next board meeting with half the neighborhood and heard Mrs. Kim use her classroom voice to ask if the board thought we were all fools. Kirk declined to run for president again. I do not know if he was asked not to. I didn't need to. A week later, I got a call from a number I didn't know. "Elaine," a voice said, softer than I expected. It was Stacy. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." It didn't matter whether she meant it. It mattered that she said it like a person and not a billboard. "I hope you'll accept this." An email arrived a minute later, a signed notice withdrawing any claim to represent our property, and an apology for any distress. I printed it and slid it into a sleeve. Don't click away. He'll get what's coming.
2 weeks later, Rico pled to something in a courtroom that smelled like old books and disinfectant. I sat in the back with Detective Meacham and didn't look at him because I had already spent enough of my soul on his choices. The judge spoke in a voice that sounded like nobody's mother, and that was good. There were fines and suspended things, and a stern part about notary misuse that warmed me in a way July heat never could. Stacy's license went into review with the board, which is a word that can mean a lot of things. Later, I heard she had to take courses and pay a penalty. Kirk sold his house in the fall and moved to a condo where nobody asked him to run anything. The HOA hired a new management company, and I sent them a copy of our choir schedule so they'd know on which Tuesdays not to play games. The house itself? It settled under our feet like a dog who finally believes it's staying. We scrubbed the refrigerator with vinegar, painted the mailbox flag red, and planted the hydrangea in the front planter. In August, it bloomed the kind of blue that looks like God's favorite pen. Owen started kindergarten with a backpack that swallowed him, and when he came home, he told me he could already read Stop, Exit, and Grandma, which made me laugh because he was right. He could read me. On the first cool Saturday, I opened the last envelope from the safe deposit box, the one that had the little flash drive. We plugged it into the cheap laptop Hal used to order parts for the shop. A video opened. Hal in his work shirt, grease on his knuckles, standing in this very kitchen. The camera was propped on a coffee mug. "If you're seeing this," he said, looking somewhere slightly above the lens because he never quite figured out where to look. "I didn't bring Elaine in time. That's on me. Honey, if you're watching," he swallowed, "I got it wrong the day Maddie left. I thought tough love was love. It wasn't. It was fear wearing a costume. So I did this instead." He gestured around, awkward. "It's not much, but it's a place, and it's ours. Maddie, if you're watching this with your mom, be easy with her. She comes by her worry honest. Owen, if you're big enough to understand, your grandpa thinks you're perfect, even if I never met you." We cried like women who have done their crying in private for too many years. We cried like women who were ready to stop. Then we fried eggs in the big skillet and sat on the back steps eating them on paper plates because the fancy plates hadn't come from Kettering yet, and because happy food tastes good on anything. In September, we held a backyard picnic for the neighbors who had stood with us. Mrs. Kim brought potato salad in a glass bowl that must have seen 1,000 PTA nights. The retired firefighter told stories about the time he pulled a raccoon out of someone's chimney. Detective Meacham brought her mother and, I suspect, kept a quiet eye to make sure nobody needed telling.
I made peach cobbler in the cast iron and a pot of coffee in my dented percolator. When the sun fell behind the maple, I stood up and tapped my spoon against my glass. I have a confession, I said, the kind you tell with witnesses, because sometimes good secrets need daylight. I looked at Maddie. She nodded. 10 years ago, I said, our daughter left because she did the bravest thing any woman can do, protect herself and her child. We didn't help her right, not at first. But Hal, bless his stubborn heart, helped her quietly. He bought this place to be her safe harbor. He asked me to help next, and we are. There was a murmur, the kind that sounds like permission. Mrs. Kim dabbed her eyes with a paper napkin. Someone started humming a hymn without meaning to, which is what happens when people who sing together get near a story that feels like church. Later that night, when the chairs were stacked and the cobbler dish soaked in soapy water, Maddie pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Mom," she said, "I don't know how to tell you this without sounding ungrateful or sappy, so I'll just say it. I want you to move in here, with us, for now, if you want." I looked at the sink full of spoons, the counters bright under the late lamplight, the magnet box on the table like a good luck charm we no longer needed. I thought of my quiet house in Kettering with its maple shadow and my choir robe on the back of the bedroom door. I thought of Owen's small hand in mine at the crosswalk that morning. "Yes," I said, and her face did that softening thing faces do when they are ready to let go. We didn't win the lottery. We didn't even get back all the money the HOA said we owed, though most of it went away the way frost does under a noon sun. But we kept the house. We kept our names on our own keys. We learned that people will try to move a story along without you if you aren't watching, and that you can put big gears in reverse with a binder and a neighbor and a detective who sings Silent Night off-key.
In October, I found a little wooden box tucked behind a stack of Hal's old shop invoices in a garage cabinet. Inside was a small tape measure, a photo of us at 22 on the courthouse steps, and a crumpled receipt from a hardware store dated the day he must have put the key in the vent. On the back, he had written, in his blocky hand, "If you find this, it means I did something right." I put the receipt in the binder under Hal's letters. I labeled it Something Right. To the women watching who are my age or near it, keep your papers. Keep your friends who show up with doorbell footage and melon cubes. Keep your skillet seasoned and your church choir folder in the glove compartment. If a stranger tells you the clock is ticking, remember it's your clock too. And if someone you love left you a secret, open it in your own time, but open it. The truth can survive 10 years in the dark, but it likes company. This was my experience, shared for awareness and for a little entertainment on a Tuesday night. Be gentle with each other and be fierce when you need to be. There will be justice, even if you have to nudge it along with a binder tab and a prayer.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.